Hello and welcome to the New York Empire podcast. I'm Dan Hilton. He's Matt Pippin, Auletta, and the Empire are back to 500. And the vibes for a team that is 5-5 and 500, the vibes, I'll tell you, post game could not have been higher. Evan Lepler and Brian Jones were on the call on the Friday Night Frisbee on YouTube. So that means I got to stand on the sideline with the team and kind of get the ebbs and flows of how that game went. So if you have forgotten, because I know it was a few days ago, it was a 23-19 win for the New York Empire over the Toronto Rush, which is obviously the result, Pippin, that makes you pretty giddy. I know that. in terms of this game being in the rearview mirror now, it winds up leaving the Empire having played 10 games with just 2 to go. With so many other teams, like again, Chicago still has half of their games left to play. The Empire have just 2 games left. So now they've got a little bit of a break to say, all right, we're 5-5. Now we know the mission. And they wound up getting the 2 wins they had to get in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously big wins. It was a bit of a strange game. We can get into that in a little bit, but at 5-5 and other teams with a bunch of games to play and everybody in the division still having to play against each other, I think the Empire are in a really good position here. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think if they beat Philadelphia, add another loss onto Philly, they might make the playoffs regardless of their result against Boston. I think 6-6 with how much everybody is still going to butt heads and having the tiebreaker, I think that's going to be enough for them. So yeah, I mean, I could see why the vibes were so high. It doesn't look like a team who is super concerned about where they're at. I think they know that they needed to take care of business. They got these 2 wins. It was a big deal, and then they looked like a team that was like kind of in celebration mode when they were like Matt LaBar had his little post game interview, and they just kind of mobbed him. I mean, yeah, it looks like the team is in a good position, both on the field and off the field. So it's great to see. And they beat the Rush. What could be better?
Yeah, they generally feel healthy. And I did see Rush owner Jim Lloyd post game, and there was obviously frustration from him because I would make the argument, having seen that team twice now, I think Toronto might be the best 2-7 team I've ever seen.
Has to be.
They're just
Has
so
to be.
talented. Yeah. They don't deserve to be 2-7. They're just so talented. But the Empire, when the dust kind of settled, because we'll talk about how this game kind of was very, very close. Well, it wasn't close, and it was really close, and it was not close at the end. But the big stats here that jump out to me is that the Empire's game plan, and Calvin Brown said it in pregame, was the Empire knew that unlike DC, they were going to have to play the opposite way. Toronto wanted to go deep. Toronto wanted to take things to the air, and the Empire won the skies. They were 10 of 13 on their hucks. Toronto were just 5 of 11, and a lot of those hucks that the Empire let up were wide open hucks as well. So they got not only in between the lines, but they also got deep on the Toronto Rush in big positions. They completed 7 of their breaks to Toronto's 3, with Marquez coming back to that D-line rotation. They also were 12 of 13 in the red zone, so really clean there. Only 11 turnovers compared to the Rush's 16. They also took the disc away. They had 10 blocks to Toronto's 5, including, I think most importantly, the O-line for the Empire kept taking the disc back as well. And I think you felt defensively that Toronto was missing a bunch of the U24 players they were. Like Marty Gallant, I think, was missing a lot from that middle space from the Toronto O-line, and then Dax Miller and Oscar Stonehouse on that D-line, and the pressure that they brought in that first matchup. I felt like those two were missing. But hey, no excuses. You got to play with who you got. I mean, you'd argue that the injuries and all that stuff were part of the Empire excuse as to why they're 5-5, so you play with who's on the field. And the Empire wind up, I think, winning the strategic categories that they knew they had to win. You knew what Toronto was going to do, and if they could make sure they minimize that and take care of business themselves, they were going to win the game. And over the course of 48 minutes, not to summarize the whole game so quickly, but that's kind of what happened.
No, I agree totally. I think it does sum it up pretty well. They had a game plan. I think they executed it pretty well. They stuck with some of the changes we saw from previous weeks. They kept Cowan on offense, Shapiro on defense. I think, as we mentioned previously, I think that's a better fit for both of those players and what the team currently needs. On defense, I know this Huck didn't count, but it was one of the team's best throws of the year. I mean, Max Shepard uncorked that 70-yard backhand that unfortunately didn't count because it got called back for a timeout. But yeah, I mean, everything just seems like it's starting to click a little bit and they're all on the right page. Now, that being said, there were a few little miscues. Both teams kind of threw into I guess you could call it a poachy defender once or twice. It was like kind of easy blocks. I wouldn't say like teams got amazing blocks under tremendous amounts of pressure. It was just kind of like, here, I'm going to throw this. Oh, someone's there. And it was like, it almost didn't even look like purposeful, like seeking out block poaching. It was almost just like, oh, this frisbee's coming to me. I'm going to get a block
Mhm.
kind of D, which, that happens on occasion at every level. And then there were a few miscues and kind of just like easy throwaways or drops. Rushmeyer Bailey's been not as reliable. Normally he's like Mr. Reliable. He's had a few little like fielding pull issues, little drops, little weird miscue throws. So, some of those kind of opened the door for Toronto in the beginning, and that was why they had a lead. But also, Toronto was completing a lot of nice over the top kind of throwing aggressive everywhere kind of looks in the beginning. And once Empire kind of clamped down on everything, you could see the game plan really taking effect. And it was mostly smooth sailing from then on out. Even when they were down a little bit, they kept the game close. And I wasn't super worried. I felt like Empire were going to kind of slowly overtake them. And that was what we saw.
Yeah, let's talk about the early mistakes. Another uncharacteristic drop you mentioned by Saul in the first point of the game. Deja vu, just like against DC. But New York did get the disc back on that instant, and Randolph winds up hucking to LaBar for the first point of the game. The big moment in the game came when the Empire were down 9-5 after being broken a few times. LaBar goes out injured, but then Jack gets the D on the huck that then Toronto immediately put up, and then Jack hucks it to Randolph the other way almost immediately. What could have been 10-5 becomes 9-6. And that was the window that New York needed for their comeback. They continued, as you said, to grind, get the comeback. Toronto still held an 11-10 lead at halftime. I can say being on the sideline, things still felt a little bit tight even at 11-10 at halftime. But there was also a big sense of belief. And the Empire then answered out of the half and never looked back. It took the entire third quarter because they kept trading then in the third before they could get some separation. But then, as you mentioned, like that being Toronto, felt like they run out of gas, but it just felt like they just didn't have enough guys, if that makes any sense. Like,
Yeah, they also Empire just like over rotated on a few marks, which made the Toronto dumps have to be a little more backwards or a little more awkward, and just a slight either lack of chemistry or just like miscommunication, whatever. It resulted in a few of those throws just being a little errant, and then yeah, so like nobody gets credit for a block for that, but I think Max Shepard was on one of those marks, and you could tell he was like pretty fired up about it. Oh, Gami Contreras got the stall too, so it's like the good marks and just like putting that little extra bit of effort in, especially when a team was maybe just starting to struggle a little bit, it just resulted in a lot of errors right around the disc where like nobody's getting credit for a block, but the team did put a lot of great pressure together.
well, I've had a bit of journalist malpractice at this point, though, because I'm 9 minutes in, and I have yet to say that this is the Matt LaBar game. That's what this was. This is
Oh yeah,
you put it up as a headline: the Matt LaBar game, the Matt LaBar game. Yardley, Pennsylvania native has 8 goals, 1 assist, 0 blocks, a +9, 519 receiving yards, 682 total yards, 37 of 37 on his completions, and 6 hockey assists. He had 4 goals once last year and twice this year. Then he had 5 goals last week in DC. So obviously the 8 goals is a career high. The 682 total yards is a career high. The 37 of 37 is a career high. The 6 hockey assists is a career high. And Randolph was speaking his praises. He says it's been huge seeing LaBar come into his own. He's always had the quickness and the instincts, but as his game knowledge has developed, he's become a really dangerous weapon for us. He's turned from being a fill cutter to a problem for the other team to a problem solver for our team. I'm excited to see him continue to develop. I think leadership has done a great job of empowering him and putting trust into him so that he knows it's his role to take over whenever he can. What makes it interesting about Matt LaBar is and you and I have spoken this in past years, progress with young players is not linear. Like he joined as, I think he was basically a teenager. He was 19, 20 in 2021. And now he's 24 years old. He's a college graduate from JMU. And he was always physically a bit more advanced for a young player. Like I had even said, 3 years ago, that I felt like as Mike and Ryan Dross were kind of nearing the ends of their career, that he would be almost an immediate replacement for them because of defensively, physically, the body he has. But he's changed, and that's not entirely the player he is. He's playing O-line for the first time. And again, it's this reminder that even this season, he had the hiccups, and shout out to LaBar parents who do listen to the show. And they called me out afterwards. They're like, hey, you said that Matt didn't put enough effort against DC, and I said, that was Matt Pippin Auletta who said that. That wasn't me. But yeah, this game, it wasn't even the amount of effort. It's just he was available. He was a guy that Toronto said, Matt LaBar, if that guy beats us, we're going to take the L. And not only did that guy beat them, but that guy stomped a hole into Toronto and put up a complete career night. I can't expect that all the time from Matt LaBar, but it's a reminder, too, that, again, players can get better. So we have to give space to players to improve. They're not just stuck in this bubble that if he wasn't a superstar in college, then he's not going to be a superstar eventually in the pro game.
Yeah, I mean, we knew he had the athletic ability for sure because he was the one tasked with covering Babbitt, or when Babbitt was still on the team, LaBar was covering some of the other team's top players. So we knew he had the athletic ability, and now he's putting together like the field sense, the game sense, just the chemistry that he's built with his teammates. I mean, you could see it out there. It was just like seamless offense for the most part. And all of this being said, I do not want to take away anything from Matt LaBar. He played amazing. The praise from John Randolph somehow eclipsed him in plus minus too. It's just the game that the two of them put together is, just wild. I mean, Randolph was plus 10. He had 8 assists, 2 goals, and a block, and he was just like from the get-go uncorking a few throws. I think on the broadcast they were kind of joking that he was on pace to shatter like the 17 assists in a game record. Mm-hmm. So because like the first, I think 3 goals he threw, and just keep doing that, sure. But yeah, I mean, the whole offense is all coming together, and having healthy Jack not have to do either play roles he doesn't want to play, or he fills where he needs. And same thing with Yacht, just like filling in and being super dangerous, just as a big body kind of lurking around. Like statistically, Yacht had a whatever game, but he made a lot of space. He does a lot of the things that are important. And, obviously he helped contribute to the win in numerous ways. It's just, and then you have these 2 other guys that are just blowing the doors off. And yeah, I mean, the team just looked great.
Yeah. It's almost a John Randolph MVP conversation heating up now with those stats, 578 total yards. He also, that being John, played 7 defensive points for 26 total points. So Randolph was also tasked to jump over to the D-line. 5 goals for Jacob Cowan, who I interviewed at halftime, who was pretty confident that they were going to find it. But Cowan, as I said, progress is not linear. And this time around for Cowan, it has been. He now looks much more comfortable in the space that the UFA field can afford him at his size. He was a +6. And then, it was a +6 and 4 assists for Jack, I should say. Most importantly for Jack, the number that I always look at is you scroll a little bit farther to the right on the stats, 0 turns. That to me is the most important thing for Jack Williams, 0 turns again for him. And as you mentioned, Yacht had a pedestrian 2 goals, 2 assists, 305 total yards, but he also became the first player in the league this season over 3,000 total yards receiving. He also played 9 defensive points for 29 total points. So Cat Stevens and Anthony Nunez, they're relying on Yacht in a lot of different ways. Yeah, we know the end of quarter situations, but there are deep points that he's playing mixed in as well, because having his size, and a reminder that when I think the Empire might have been the best iteration that they've ever been, Ben Yacht was playing defense. And then he switched over for the postseason to that O-line, and that was probably the best version I've seen of any team in the UFA in history. And as you mentioned, the fact that Yacht, and then we haven't mentioned Calvin Brown, who I think I was most impressed with this season, or this game, being an occasional cutter and working on that Jack chemistry. Finally, it feels like Brown and Jack, they understand who's in the handler space, who's cutting downfield, where are they cutting downfield, how do we find them open? And then, of course, Brown, reminder that, yes, he has some turns, but he also is one of the best throwers in the game. He delivered the Steph Curry turnaround on that inside huck to Yacht. It was so filthy.
There are always going to be turnovers in any game, even played in pristine conditions. So, you can live with some turnovers, especially when your downfield cutters are really taking care of the disc, or your other handler, like a Rushmeyer Bailey, is just, maintaining possession. Jack's not making any mistakes because he's doing exactly what he wants on the field now, like picking and choosing his spots. So, yeah, I mean, they can live with a few turnovers from Calvin Brown. I think he had better shot selection this game anyway. So, yeah, I mean, every once in a while, a huck is going to, trail, or it's going to get caught in a little burst of wind, and a defender's going to maybe make a play on it. That, you can live with some of those. You have to uncork it on occasion to kind of spread the field and make the defense play honest on you anyway. So you can live with those. There's wiggle room in that. So, yeah, I mean, the only player on offense who even had what I would consider a not great game would just be like the very, very tiny mistakes from Rushmeyer Bailey, and they were nothing. They were solved, they were fixed. They still
Yeah.
scored on some of those mistake points anyway. So like he still played absolutely acceptable level. So yeah, they were great. And for defense, I mean, they had
Yeah.
Marquez back. They had
Before we
Oliver
move over to,
Fay.
before we move over to the defense, though, I have one more point about the Empire offense / Toronto defense. Then we're going to pivot to the defense of the Empire. Toronto defense tried to snake in the grass, and it was
Yeah, they were. Yeah, no, they were way off.
working. So, I mean, I want to give you a runway. I mean, some space here to trash the Toronto Rush's idea to try to snake in the grass.
You know, I'm going to surprise you here.
Okay.
I kind of get what they were going for, and in general, when you have somebody who wants to chuck it, and you have a great receiver going deep, you're thinking, I'm going to launch this. There's no one there. You might not even like glance around for half a second. You might not, whatever. The problem was Yacht is a little too big, a little too fast, and the throw was too much into the space away from the snake in the grass still. But if that throw had just been like straight down the middle of the field and they had made a slightly better play on it, maybe they could have done something. I mean, yeah, I don't think teams should do that all the time, obviously, but I truly don't hate that they tried to maybe steal a quick block on something like that. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. That's what I have to say about that. Yeah.
All right.
It didn't pan out for them, obviously, on that point. It was too easy for the Empire, but yeah, no, I think the field is so big and players are good, and if offenses are flowing well, sometimes you maybe just catch them on like a quick little brain fart, and they don't see that you have a guy ready to run 40 yards across the field while your player has to run like 50 yards on
Yeah.
a long vertical out. So I get it. It wasn't executed perfectly, and the throw was pretty good, and Yacht's pretty big, but yeah, I truly I don't hate it.
Well, Matt Pippin Auletta loves complimenting the Toronto Rush. That's what I learned today.
No. You've misstrued that, I think.
So
But I didn't hate that.
Empire fans, it's that time of year again. The UFA season is here, and New York is offering season ticket packages at watchufa.com/empire. Packages include your general admission pass with merch perks and free unlimited popcorn, a disc, and a family pack so you can bring the whole household. Not to mention all season ticket passes include admission to all our away games as well. Just show your pass at the front gate.
All right, so let's compliment, I guess, the Empire D. You had already begun. Yeah, Marquez coming back to deal with Blastman's throws over the top, I think was really essential. It basically shut down what has become Toronto's bread and butter. Those hammers from Blastman are what opens up everything with Karklins. And I guess I want to lead you into the Karklins conversation here because there were some changes made. He still had his game, but it was kind of for the Empire almost the opposite of the Matt LaBar thing where they said Karklins going to get his as long as we can limit everybody else. Because Karklin still got his. He had 5 goals, an assist, 1 block, 557 total yards. And the defensive matchups, it was Shapiro and Davis who started on Karklins. Oliver Chartock also came back to the 20, primarily matched up with James Lewis defensively. And James Lewis did struggle with Chartock. Chartock had a really good game. And then Chartock winds up moving over to Karklins a bunch in the second half, and Fay moves over to James Lewis. That was a second half defensive change that I think really did change everything. And I think what we saw from the Empire offense, at least, is that Oliver Chartock, especially working, as you mentioned, with Agami Contreras, his club teammate for Exist, that handler D from Agami Contreras in the second half was starting to wear Toronto down. He got the stall up he got a stall out at 16-15 on the goal line, got the break to score to put New York up 2, and that wound up being the place where New York never looked back. And I think that combination of Chartock and Agami Contreras and their comfortability together is offensively good, but defensively, Chartock kind of reminded us that guy is I wouldn't say he's an elite defender, but he may be able to help the team more for the remainder of this season defensively than offensively.
Yeah, I mean, he started playing on defense a few years back. He was kind of one of their back and forth players, but yeah, I mean, he's also the D-line needs a little more punch on offense, or I think on occasion Empire need to leave the D-line out instead of calling them off immediately on timeouts on occasion. It helps tire out the opposing offense because then they're forced to play defense after they've made a mistake, and that's always tiring. Yeah, I just the chemistry looked good, the defense looked good. Everybody was kind of picking up and shifting and helping, and Faye being back helps too. He's big. The offense is also the Empire offense is playing very well currently. I don't think they need Oliver Chartock. I think they kind of put finally the right pieces in the right spots and everyone's healthy and everyone's kind of flowing. I think they have what they need. If you tell me he's going to be the eighth guy coming in when somebody needs a break or things like that, that makes sense to me. That's fine. But if you don't need that, or you got minutes for him to play, then yeah, absolutely put him out there on defense. I mean, he's a good player on both sides of the disc. I would keep him out there. I think he's got a good field sense.
Yeah, I want to also kind of defend Shapiro a little bit here too. Like the way that Toronto sets up their offense is the whole point is to create space for Karklins. So Shapiro was on an island a lot of the time by himself with, again, one of the most dynamic cutters the league now has. So while Shapiro looked like he's being victimized quite often in the first half by Karklins, Shapiro is much more a length kind of guy, and Karklin he was a bit quicker than Shapiro. But Shapiro he has that size. I think he puts on a mark really, really well. But Oliver is just a little bit different of a defender who's able to put a little bit more pressure on the cutting of Karklins, which again denies him the disc initially. Which, speaking of denying the disc, Ty Barbieri, he didn't look healthy to me in this game. He only played 12 O points, 5 D points.
I thought the same thing.
Or maybe here's the other counter argument that maybe Sam Jonas, who didn't do anything statistically in this game,
yeah,
was just shutting him down most of the night. But I think it was a little bit of both. I think Sam Jonas also a premier defender, and I think Barbieri, did not look 100%.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought during the broadcast was halfway through the game, I felt like when Toronto was on offense, you were almost only hearing the name of Karklins, and for good reason, or it makes sense. He's making a lot of the big plays, and he's a star. But I had to like double check on occasion who was in and what was happening. And I just felt like you didn't hear a lot of the other names because they were just getting like the small reset throws where like these little unders. They weren't doing anything super dangerous or super exciting. So, the color commentary isn't really highlighting them. It's not like, oh, an under to whoever in this situation. So I think the team just, like you said, they let Karklins they weren't overly worried about what he was doing, and they were hoping they were going to win some of those matchups. And they beat everybody else, and that was all they needed to do because one guy is not going to beat you 95% of the time.
No, I think Marquez on Blastman limited so much of what Toronto wanted to do to stretch things out. And then the Empire did a really good job bringing help over the top as well and getting into the space on those hucks that Toronto wanted to put up. Toronto only scored one goal in the final 5:48 of the game. So this is just the mental side of things that you saw that flip was switched for the Empire, where they just slammed the door in their face. And I said, like, there are guys like Agame Contreras, his energy on the sideline cannot be understated. And the little things around the edges, like an Antoine's energy on the sideline. And when guys weren't playing, again, Max Shepard just completely being bought in. He played 9 points, but again, it was 9 important points when he was on the field. And for Max to be selfless in that way is a big credit to everybody buying in. And that's totally necessary. And so I think the last 5:48 defensively, when Toronto scored just one goal, is a testament to the fact that this team, I think for the first time this season, was like, yeah, this is us. We're way better than those guys. And we're going to slam the door on this. And this is us.
Yeah. And you could tell that they, in the DC game, when they were down early, you could kind of get the vibe like maybe they don't believe in themselves. And then we heard later after the broadcast, like they didn't believe in themselves until who got that hand block halfway through that game? Yeah. And then they kind of realized they were maybe in it. They had a fighting chance, and then they kind of believed in themselves again. And you could kind of just tell the way the game played out. They were back in. This, even when they were down a little early, I didn't get, I'm watching on a stream, but I didn't get the vibe from the body language, the way everything was transpiring, that they didn't believe in themselves at any point. Like, I think they know where they're at, and I think they're in an okay position having beaten DC. And then they were like, okay, well, this is a hiccup during the game, but this is not like the end all be all of our season. We're going to be fine. And then, as we've said, how the game played out and how they looked and how it felt, like it just, winning by a few goals felt right. I think that's how they played, and it all kind of made sense at the end of it.
Yeah, they were not, as I said, deterred from this. Like talking to Jacob Cowan, and he's a quiet guy, but there's also an underrated energy to him. Like he's a very thoughtful person as well. Like a lot of the Empire players this season, I would say they all have a very similar disposition. Like the younger ones, I mean, like not the older ones, but the younger ones. They're not necessarily loud, boisterous guys, but there is a bit of confidence. Like they're yelling on the sideline, whatever it is. But like you talk to them in person, and there's a calmness to a lot of them that is, and I think John Randolph epitomizes this more than almost anybody else, where he never really gets rattled. Like it's still the same John Randolph all the time. And again, I put Calvin Brown, Jacob Cowan, like I put them all in that same group where they're all 24 to 26 years old, and they're not worried about stuff. Like they've felt diversity before. And I think it's interesting too, because I can't speak for Yacht on this one, but I do wonder about Yacht and Jack and Tuan and the holdovers from the 3 championships, if they feel the pressure of we are the Empire dynasty, and maybe some of those young players, they just don't. Like Jacob Cowan in his UFA career has only ever been 5-5, like I think, yes, like this organization, New York Empire, like, and I say we in this way because you and I both work for the Empire, so it's like New York Empire are a championship caliber team. That is what the Empire are. The expectation is to try to win championships and do it in the best way possible. And I think that is the expectation going in. When players sign their contracts, that's what they know is kind of for them. Like you're going to be expected to go to championship weekend. Leave that weekend open because that is, that is what we're trying to do here. And I know a lot of teams can do it in lip service, but the Empire, again, had 3 trophies to say, that is who we are. That's who we expect to continue to be. But I think it's almost a credit, again, to players like Cowan and Calvin Brown and the new ones who are jumping into this fray, who haven't done all that winning, Agami Contreras as well, who would want to be a part of that. Like, and I think that was a really important part of this season, to not let the younger players accept, not mediocrity, but accept that, hey, we're not good enough. And to say, no, we're still the New York Empire. We're just going to you're young. So here's a few games to figure things out. And now our expectations are back to what they should be, which is this is a championship caliber team. Time to win number 4.
Yeah. And, looking back on it, it's hard to say how everybody thought the season was going, because they did miss some time with people out for injuries, and it was a bunch of different people on O&D. And, when a team is that in flux and there's new pieces and everything's trying to fit together and you don't know where it's all going to work or what's going to click, and, something might look great one game and then all of a sudden the next game you go back to it and it's like, we're not getting the same results. That's confusing and hard, and it just takes a little time to kind of work itself out. And I feel like now, when they really, really needed it and all it mattered was a win, we've seen a good version of the team these last 2 weeks. Sure, there are still a few mistakes they can cut out, and I think they could have won both of these games much more comfortably. But if they continue on that trajectory, yeah, this is a team that I would expect to be in the East Championship game and see how it goes. I mean, Boston's a good team, but who's to say Empire can't easily win that game if they play well? I think they're right there. I think it's all coming together at the right time, and as long as everybody stays healthy, I think it's all just it's the right time for it, and it's nice that everybody's healthy.
Hey Empire fans, ShopEmpireUltimate.com is your home for all the latest Empire gear. From hats to hoodies to discs and coaching, ShopEmpireUltimate.com is the best place to get yourself ready for the next Empire game.
Hola Empire aficionados, ShopEmpireUltimate.com es tu casa para todo lo nuevo de Empire, desde cachuchas a sudaderas a frisbees y entrenadores. ShopEmpireUltimate.com es el lugar para que te alistes para el siguiente juego de Empire.
Well, I mean, we look pretty smart here because we were saying that this is a team that was either going to miss the playoffs or potentially they could be a championship contender. And that's still what it feels like at this point in the season. What's next to go is Sunday, July 13th. So you won't hear from us for a little bit. I know we'll miss you too. But Sunday, July 13th at the Stadium at Memorial Field versus Philadelphia. Then it's Saturday, July 19th. So just 6 days later at the Stadium at Memorial Field versus Boston. So the Empire, yes, they control their own destiny. But to your point, I think some things are going to happen to potentially help the Empire because the other teams play each other. DC's last 4 games are hosting Montreal, at Boston, hosting Boston, and at Philadelphia. And then Philly's last 4 are hosting Montreal, I should say. And this is an important note, that hosting Montreal, that is this weekend. So that being Montreal on Friday is at DC, and then they're at Philly, which I think obviously supports Philadelphia, that they're the ones who get Montreal in the back-to-back because Montreal's a tough team. And then Philly is then hosting Boston, at New York, and hosting DC. And again, Philly also hosts DC, having beat them already earlier in the season in that last matchup on May the 19th, or July 19th, I should say, while concurrently, Empire are facing off against Boston. So that's all going to happen at the same time, kind of feeling like a World Cup, group stage vibe.
Yeah.
We'll see how it all ends at the, 9 o'clock, and a lot of Charlie Hoppus and I are going to be on the call for that. And, we're going to be score watching, I think, trying to see what's happening with Philly DC, because I think that very much game could decide who winds up being, we'll say, the 3 seed if New York has already taken care of business against Philadelphia on the Sunday prior. Remember also, DC does numerically own the tiebreaker, though, because of the plus-minus against New York. But New York does own the tiebreaker at this point against Philadelphia, who owns the tiebreaker against DC because they have the 1 win, but it's only by 1 goal. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. But yeah, it feels like the Empire are in a good spot. But I think if you're an Empire fan, at least this weekend, while you and I will not be talking Empire for the next few weeks, I think we all are going to be, I know the word in Spanish is aficionados. I don't know it in French, unfortunately, but I think we're all going to be fans of the Montreal Royale, at least this weekend. Because, yeah, if Montreal goes and beats DC and then the next night beats Philadelphia, New York are going to say, all right, Sunday, July 13th, let's punch our postseason ticket.
If Montreal wants to beat Philly and beat DC and then just lose both their games to Toronto, that would be just perfect. That would alleviate a lot of stress. It would be great.
Right.
And then Toronto would get a few more wins, which I feel like they deserve because they're a pretty good team this year. It's unfortunate that they're in the East and they'll probably potentially end up with the worst record. I guess Montreal still could too, but yeah. Do you think a team, I know we're not the math guys crunching all these numbers, but do you think a team is going to make the playoffs in the East with a record worse than 6-6? Are we going to see 5-7 make it in?
No, I don't think so, because I do think DC and Philly are going to take care of, one of them is going to have to take care of business against Montreal. So that means, well, yeah, because DC, Philly, just doing the numbers here, that if DC or Philly, one of them beats Montreal, even if DC loses both to Boston and then beats Philly to get in, that means they're 6-6. And then for Philadelphia, who are also 4-4, even if they lose to Montreal, then let's say that they lose to Boston as well, and then let's say they beat Montreal, lose to Boston, then lose to New York, and then beat DC in that final game, then they get in at 6-6. So it's looking like the Empire could also get in at 6-6. It looks like both teams, if Boston do win out, both teams who get in are going to be 6-6.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's what it seems like based on the numbers. With time. Okay. So, boy, again. And Montreal could mess this whole thing up by beating DC, Philadelphia, and Toronto twice. It would because then they would have 7 wins.
They would be the 2 seed in all likelihood.
Yep. So there is chaos to be had for sure. And all I know is that our prediction about, by the way, the Detroit Mechanics, they did win for their second time since 2017. So congratulations to them. And a reminder, too, that around the league, anybody can kind of beat anybody in a way, or at least you could beat the teams around you. So if you're Toronto, you're saying, hey, Montreal, we got to get your number. The only team I do have a little bit of my heart gets bleed for them a little bit is just the Bighorns. But we always knew that was going to be a tough opening year for them. So hopefully they're learning some things on the fly in a difficult West Division and figuring some things out. So hopefully, again, they can pull one out before the end of the season. But yeah, right now in the UFA, all teams are deeper than they've ever been. And that means results can change from week to week. But the East, this is the best division I've ever seen.
Yeah. For sure. I don't even think it's close to maybe the weird pandemic super division they made that one time. What was it called?
The Atlantic Division. Yeah.
That was pretty tough sledding too.
Yeah.
But I don't think top to bottom, I don't think it was quite as cutthroat on a week to week basis.
I think that's
yeah. Yeah, no, it's been a good fun season so far, and hopefully we'll just be 7-5, smooth sailing, nothing to worry about. We'll beat Boston, and then we go into the playoffs as a nice 2 seed. We get a home game, and then we win a few more games, and then then we celebrate.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, beating Boston would be 7-5. Yeah, so that's what the Empire, they have their job to do out in front of them, but which is now at this point keep everybody healthy. So Ryan Anderson,
Yeah,
really Ryan Anderson for the next 2 weeks, you're the guy with the job to do. Keep everybody healthy with restricting those hamstrings and making sure everyone's healthy for the remainder of this season. No concussions. Everybody relax at practice. And then it's again Sunday, July 13th at the stadium at Memorial Field versus Philadelphia. We will have that one on watchufa.tv. And then, of course, Matt and I will have a few hours to talk about that one before it's Saturday, July 19th, again at the stadium at Memorial Field out in Mount Vernon against the Boston Glory, which could be a preview of the East Finals because Boston have already punched their ticket and they will very likely at this point, yeah, mathematically, they've already gotten the 1 seed. So
yeah, they're the 1 seed. Nobody's getting the 8 wins. Yeah,
nope, they've done it. So Boston also will have some time to get healthy. That's another little subplot because DC does play Boston twice. So how many players of their healthy 20, like will they sit out Jeff Babbitt, who's been a little bit injured these last few weeks, seasons, but weeks. But so will they keep Jeff Babbitt out of the lineup? Will they just kind of try to get healthy and not care about the results? So will DC kind of get 2 easy wins against Boston? My gut says no, because I think Boston still want to be playing their best ultimate come the postseason. But yeah, still plenty of questions to be answered. And yeah, again, we got a few weeks off now, so we're going to enjoy it. And for everybody out there, for Matt, Pippin, Auletta, myself, and the entire Empire family, yeah, take care of yourself, but still enjoy your watchufa.tv membership because there is a lot of Ultimate Frisbee left to be played in 2025.